So my name's Emma Foreman and I'm the lead OT from the OT practice. Last year, to get a better understanding of the needs of the local authorities, the OT practice commissioned a survey and sent freedom of information requests to 365 local authorities about their OT waiting lists. So from the responses, we got 342 and we got 161 answering all the questions. So although just under half, it does provide a bit of an idea of the kind of general trends that are happening of the OT demands and also the management of waiting lists. Next slide. So if we first of all understand the OT role and why it is important to understand the reason for the great demand. So OTs play an essential role within the local authorities, completing assessments to identify needs and solutions to enable individuals with disabilities to live as independently as possible, both within their homes and in accessing the community. So within a social care team, we're involved with providing assistive technology, activities of daily living equipment, major minor adaptations. We may be completing single-handed care reviews, DFG risk assessments, moving and handling assessments, dealing with safeguarding concerns and housing needs, falls preventions, reablement, the list goes on. So as we can see from the stats that we got back, so OTs are making up around 4% of the local authority workforce. However, the demand and the percentage of the referrals is about 45%. What we found is 28 authorities have identified vacant posts that amount to a cost of 3.1 million. So unfortunately, there just aren't enough OTs, and recruitment and retention of OTs is a common difficulty. So with insufficient OTs, the length of OT waiting lists can grow. Next slide, please. So the length of waits for OT. So the big demand, as well as the growing ageing population, and the lack of OTs, we are beginning to see waiting lists as a kind of a common thing. But should this really be the norm? So the findings we got, average wait times were 3.8 months for adults, 5.6 months for children and young people, and 72% have more than 100 individuals on the waiting list. So as you can see, the figures are quite high in terms of the waiting list. Next slide, please. So if we kind of look a bit more into these waiting lists and consider what they're made up of. So DFGs are a high percentage in all of the local authorities, with the highest being over 600. Moving and handling is another large part of these waiting lists. So if we think about moving and handling, it's a high risk area that requires often urgent assessments to ensure that any risks are being managed, and they will be at the front of the queue, leaving the DFGs behind. So you can see with the numbers here that they are exceptionally high, and I think we'd all have concerns that obviously being on a waiting list is going to be harmful for the individual and carers involved. Next slide, please. So there are financial implications when needs are not being met. So being on a waiting list is likely to impact an individual's quality of life and well-being, as well as potentially increasing risks not being managed. OTs can risk assess and problem solve solutions that allow individuals to remain in their homes, have appropriately sized care packages with the right equipment and adaptations in place. This can prevent breakdowns in care, falls and injuries. So if we look at some of the figures here, so if care cannot be provided within the home and a person needs to move into a nursing home, in the private sector, this could cost £847 per week. Residential care in the private sector, £659. And then local authority own provision residential care can be over £1,000 per week. And if we think about children, where there have been breakdowns of care and they need to go into care, a local authority care home for children can be £4,705 per week, and then voluntary private sector care homes for children can be around 3,414. So big high costs. In terms of things like falls prevention, by preventing an ambulance call out, which can be around £250, and also considering the hospital stays, both long and short. I mean, a long stay can be over £3,000. You can see how the financial implications hit both the NHS and social care as well. Next slide, please. So if we think about the solutions, so how best to manage the high demands and the waiting lists for OT. So first of all, just thinking about better partnership working across housing, social care and the private sector. So considering how teams can collaborate to meet the needs of the local population. Effective use of staff skills. So considering the adaptations without delay guide, making sure that the most appropriate staff are utilised within the process of assessing for DFGs. It doesn't have to be OTs. Technical officers and OTAs are valuable in managing a number of cases, whereas senior or more experienced OTs need to be able to deal with the more complex cases. Thinking about waiting list management, it's important to ensure there's a good triage process in place when the referral first comes into the local authority to gather the sufficient information to be able to make the right decisions, so that those that are unlikely to be eligible for DFGs are signposted and diverted onto the correct pathway. The risks also need to be assessed to ensure that those with high risks are prioritised. And it's at this point there needs to be a clear pathway and explanation for the client, so they're aware of what the process is going to be. And then also it's about reviewing the waiting list as well to ensure that needs have not changed, and also to keep the clients informed as well. So the fourth solution is where the OT practice might come in. So commissioning external independent OT practices. So part of the solution to waiting lists is due to the shortage of OTs. So through outsourcing elements of the service to the private sector, providing a professional service which is tailored to the local authority needs, with the flexibility to meet the peaks and troughs of demand, this might be the solution. This could be periodic or a regular commissioning of batches of cases. Next slide, please. So from the survey that we got back, the waiting lists of 35 authorities have been outsourced to at least some of their OT services. So this is just over a fifth, or 22% of the 161 authorities. So as many left this blank on the Freedom of Information request, so the proportion may be higher. So of the 35 who had outsourced, this was usually less than 100 cases, but for one authority, it was over 8,000. And it's worth saying that at the moment, the OT practice has seen a huge uptick of inquiries from local authorities since COVID. Waiting lists seems to be increasing even more, so requesting OT input to assist with these waiting lists. Next slide, please. So if we think about the comparative costs of outsourcing, so if we think about an OT employed basic salary of £33,730 per year, but then we also add in the costs, the direct and indirect overheads and capital overheads, this can amount to £65,514 per year. And then if we think about the time available for clinical work, this has been worked out at around 41 weeks per year. So this is taking out the 29 days of annual leave, 8 days of statutory leave, 10 days of study or training days, and also an allowance of the average of 8.7 days for sick leave. So the estimates we got back from the OT teams is that the employed member of staff is completing 3 to 4 standard cases per week. So on the 41 weeks, that would be 143 cases per year. So then we can then equate for an employed member of staff, an OT, per case, that would be £458. we found that the average cost of outsourcing cases from a freedom of information request was £235 per case. So you can see that this has a potential to allow an outsourcing OT model to complete almost twice as many assessments per year for the same cost as the employed model, demonstrating that outsourcing can be a very effective service tool. And with the recent announcement from the Chancellor of the 13.5 increase in the DFG budget, this could be used effectively to address the waiting list through outsourcing. So independent OT practice can support in-house capacity in a variety of ways. It could be looking at waiting lists, auditing these, helping to reprioritise where required, and maybe clearing those who no longer require input. It could be a one-off waiting list clearance due to a period of high demand. It could be an ongoing support to boost a team's capacity. For example, a set number of referrals each month. Or it could be targeting specific cases, maybe paediatrics or moving and handling. Or maybe specific project work, such as single-handed care assessments or equipment reviews. It can also be used to cover sickness or maternity leave or recruitment gaps. Or it may be on specific cases that have been identified because they're very complex and they need case management. Next slide, please.
Another minute. Oh, last slide.
I've got this one. So the OT practice has been assisting local authorities to reduce their waiting list for many years. We've got associates all over the UK, and we pride ourselves on being able to be flexible and accommodate the exact requirements to support the OT teams. There is not a one-fit-for-all approach, and at the moment, due to COVID, we have been using a remote-first policy. And we've been doing a couple of local authorities where we've been using remote work only to clear their waiting lists, and this has been working really well. If you would like to inquire with our practice to see how we might be able to assist, please have a look at our website on www.theotpractice.co.uk, or you can give us a call to 0330 024 9910. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emma. I think there's a bit of chat in the chat box about what's covered and costs. So some people seem to be paying more, and some people seem to be paying less. So yeah, got a good conversation going, and lots of emojis floating up the screen. So thank you for that, Emma.
Thank you.